Here we go.
Well, welcome to another edition of Getting to the Other Side and helping couples to navigate the road to recovery. I am Eddie Capparucci, and it's good to have you folks back with us. It looks like we have a good audience already. I'm sure there'll be more joining us as we go on. This program is designed to help those who are struggling with sexual addiction as well as their partners who are dealing with betrayal to navigate that road to recovery and to bring them to a place that offers healing, forgiveness, and a new beginning. Um, this is this week we're going to be doing part 2 of our topic, moving beyond treating just the addiction. As I told you last time, I believe that when it comes to treating a pornography or sex addiction, we owe it to those who are struggling and to their partners to go beyond helping just manage the disorder and instead to navigate those character issues that lead individuals to struggling with nurturing and cultivating relationships. And as we discussed last time, just teaching someone how to manage their sexual or pornography addiction is just not enough when it comes to helping those who've been betrayed to feel safe and confident in moving forward to reconnect. So Tammy's going to put a slide up for you, and this is that slide that we.
And I will
Oh,
in just a second, but I want to tell them too. So if you missed the last time in the chat, I'm going to get the slides up first, but then I'm going to, I will give you a link so that you can go back and watch the first session. So don't think, oh, I won't follow. You will follow with this, but also we'll give you a link to the previous session. So hang in there. And I also wanted to mention, if you have questions about this or other things, the Q&A at the bottom of the screen, feel free to put those in there. And after the presentation is over, we will start answering those. One more thing I want to say is Eddie is going to be a guest in the rooms this weekend. We have the Super Saturday Recovery Summit, so I'm super excited to have Eddie as one of the guests this weekend. So I'll tell you more about that, or you can email me and I will give you more information about that too. And somebody's saying, is this meeting for couples? Yes and no. It's one of those, it's all good relationship stuff. I mean, the stuff that Eddie shares is mostly for couples, but I think it's applicable to any healthy relationship too. Right. Don't you think, Eddie?
Yeah, I mean, basically what we're going to be talking about here is it's one, the person who has the addiction needs to make other changes than just being able to manage the addiction. The person who's been betrayed needs to see those changes in order to feel more comfortable and feel more confident that when they're moving back into that relationship, that they are moving into, they're engaging with someone now who's made substantial changes in their life. So yes, so it could be for the individual to learn, these are what I need to be doing. It could be for an individual who's been betrayed to say, these are what I should be looking for. It could be for a couple together.
Okay, so I'm going to get the slides. I'm working on it. So just.
You work on that. I'll continue through here. So anyway, the reconnection process is really made easier when those who are struggling with the addiction seek to make very significant changes in key areas that impact their ability to do relationships. And that's the problem. They can't do relationships. And why? Because they weren't given the tools and the resources required in the early years of development. They build their relationship based more upon physical intimacy instead of emotional intimacy. And along with that, most of them have never really witnessed the model that was exhibited of what makes a healthy relationship. We have our slide up there now. And as I pointed out on the program many, many times, this addiction is not about the need for sex. It's about the desire for emotional intimacy and connection. And it's just that most of these individuals that we're talking about don't realize that's what they're seeking. So you could see the problem we have. We don't know how to gain emotional intimacy. We don't know how to achieve that. but yet it's a strong desire that we have, which causes this underlining frustration. And therefore, we go and to try to deal with that, we do it in very unhealthy ways. So the last time we were together, I introduced you to what I had identified as the major components that are going to wind up causing you to have an issue here with, and I'm looking for my slide right now, and I can't find it. Hold on. This has been a day of.
Tell me about it.
This has
I've got
been
your
a
show
day.
notes too, so.
Yeah, and I was just looking for mine, and mine just went away.
Wow.
Can I ask you to take that slide down for a second? Because obviously, when in sharing the screen, there we go. Okay, now you can put it back up.
You hope.
We're gonna get this, folks. I promise you, we really are good. So anyway, last time what I did was I identified what were those significant defects, and there's 11 in all that I believe impact people's ability to engage in healthy relationship. And as Tammy said before, if you missed the last show, strongly encourage you to go back and listen to it, because as we go in depth to each and every one of these relationship killers. So with that, for the sake of time, I'm just going to start to kind of dive into these, and I want to look at some of them. And let's start at the top of the chart with, you know, who the new person is, the new individual. They learn to face emotional pain. If you remember last week, what was up there was they avoid emotional pain. And that's at the heart of most addiction, is that unresolved emotional pain that's being covered up by addictive behavior. And this is especially true with those dealing with a sex or a pornography addiction. That inability to sit with the emotional distress, and it leads individuals to distract themselves, you know, seeking comfort. So we need to learn that how do we approach our pain is not by running away, but instead embracing it and processing it. And in doing so, yeah, it's going to hurt, it's going to sting, but you're going to learn that holding on to this pain will not kill you. Sitting with pain actually helps us to grow emotionally. It teaches us to be vulnerable, be empathetic. And those are all qualities that those who are addicted to pornography and sex struggle with. We sitting in the pain by simply first accepting the fact it exists. It's there. I recognize the emotions that come with it. And then finally, I find a trusted individual that I can share that with, that I can be vulnerable with. And again, that could be your partner, could be, you know, your support group person, whoever it might be, but to be able to be vulnerable at that time, not by you avoiding that emotional stress. Okay, what you're doing is you are just continuing to put yourself in a position where your risk of acting out remains high. You know, of having the ability to sit with your pain, that's the first step of learning how to become truly emotionally intimate. We move to the next thing on our chart, and it said demonstrate curiosity. And if you remember last week, it talked about the lack of curiosity. And as you're going to learn in a moment, that those who struggle with a sex and porn addiction, they spend a great deal of time in their own heads. And therefore, they miss out on a lot that's happening in the world, especially regarding their loved ones. And developing this strong sense of curiosity is the next step we take in examining the journey in this transformation that we're taking. And we're not talking about curiosity in the way of, oh, baseball statistics or, you know, finances in the stock market or any other interest. We're talking about instead curiosity about the people that surround them, okay, especially their loved ones. Probing and asking questions that deep in a relationship says loud and clear, I care. But to do this, you have to sit with the emotional pain that surrounds your fear, that if I'm curious, I may ask the wrong question or say the wrong thing. That is why most folks will not dive in and do that, because they are just afraid. Oh, I'm going to open up Pandora's box here. So I'm just going to sit back, be quiet, let them talk for a while and not address anything. And that doesn't help the situation at all. However, and that's what's going to happen, if you let your fear win, you're not going to be able to fully understand your partner and their needs, their wants, and desires. And that's just, once again, going to continue to get you engaging in a very weak relationship. The third point we're going to talk about is, and this is a large one, this is the area of growth and the fact that we seek emotional connection. And the other one, if you recall, what it says is we cannot emotionally connect. Connecting in a relationship, I don't have to tell you, it is a critical aspect of it. You know, when we seek the emotional connection, we could start in three ways to do this. I want to give you 3 points. How do I emotionally connect? Because that's a question I get all the time. Okay, you want me to emotionally connect, but I don't know how. There's 3 things. 1, active engagement. And active engagement, that requires that we are intently focusing on your partner and you're actively participating in that interaction and that conversation. You know, that means you can't just be present, you must be engaged. The second element is what we call emotional attunement, which basically is studying your partner's emotional state. It's about trying to understand what are they experiencing and what is their point of view. Now, again, this may be something that's a little bit difficult. It's going to take time, and it's going to require each individual to help the other to learn about what is their emotional landscape. But again, for the folks who are struggling with the addiction, there's the fear of sitting there and saying, so tell me what you feel, because what they're afraid they're going to do is start a process that where those who've been betrayed are going to be grieving, and that grieving may be very intense, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It has to happen. But the fear that I don't want to go there keeps everything dormant. And you've seen me say this to you many, many times. Although you may see everything very smooth on the surface, underneath, this is what's going on for those who are betrayed. So we need to be able to actually be very active and taking an interest in the other person. And then finally, the last part is being emotionally responsive. And basically that is responding appropriately, sensitively, and compassionately to the other person's needs at the moment. Because when we're responsive, okay, we're not turning away from the other person, okay? We will hear what they feel. We will actually hear it. You can pick up what emotions they are in their voice, in their tonality. We can relate to the state of mind that they're in without becoming defensive and closing down. And we've all heard that before, where it's like, you're not listening to me, you're not paying attention, you just want to run away. And it really comes down to this. I tell my clients all the time, do not allow your feeling to trump your partner's feelings. You have to be very cognitive of that moment when they're grieving, it is not about you. And I know the shame that sets in, I know it feels awful, but you have to rise above that and be outwardly looking to see what they're hurting from. So that brings us to being outwardly focused, period. And before, what it was that people are inwardly focused. These individuals, they spend way too much time in their own head. And to build up this area of weakness, individuals have to slow everything down. Now, that's a problem for people who have addictions, but it's not impossible to do. Techniques like this, sometimes meditation can be extremely beneficial in helping you to be still and slow everything down. But another great technique It's to see yourself as a witness. Therefore, what you're doing is you're trying to become very aware of what your surroundings are. You are observing in a very in the moment, in the moment mindset. And therefore, you want to do that on a regular basis. And this is a skill that takes practice, practice, and practice. And the more you do it, the better your relationships are going to be, because the person who's betrayed, who has suffered in the past, saying, you know what, you haven't really noticed me. You ran away from me. You've ignored me. By doing this, what that's going to do is going to make them feel, oh, you know what? I'm special. You do have my attention. I have your attention. And I know that you will be there for me in the future, versus the fear they have of, okay, when do you start to wander off on your own again? We move to has interest and passions in, you know, other areas of their life. As I mentioned to you last time, that a lot of these folks, they don't have a lot of passion. They don't have a lot of friends. But what you need to do, you need to start living life. And I've seen, you know, way too many people of my clients who have no life whatsoever. And that makes for a very boring relationship. If I don't have interest, I have nothing to share. And that we're trying to get around. If you need to begin the process of brainstorming potential interest. That's the other thing clients say, I don't even know where to begin. Well, you know what? Go to Hobby Lobby and walk around and see if anything catches your attention. As you've heard me say over and over again on this show, Google's your friend. You know, go on there and Google and do a search for the top 100 hobbies in your age range and see what comes up. Ask your partner about maybe interests that they are not engaging in, or what they might want to do. And it may be something you might be able to share together. But the bottom line is to get a life, because that ultimately is going to strengthen your relationship. That moves us to the strong emotional IQ. 9 out of 10 people who come into my office, they have a very low emotional IQ. And as I told you before, this is like the #2 complaint I get from the people who've been betrayed. And again, what this means is that individuals have a difficult time emotionally connecting with others because they don't know what they truly feel. And even if they do know what they feel, they struggle to express it. And finally, they struggle when others attempt to be vulnerable with them. And it's all about anxiety. And to strengthen your emotional IQ, you need to understand your emotions. There's a great organization out there called Emotions Anonymous, and you may want to check out their website. And for meetings and for materials, they have live meetings, phone meeting, chat, internet. But I really strongly urge you to look at this. I have several clients who've gone through the program, and it's been something that's been great for them. And I believe it's emotionsanonymous.org is the website, but I would definitely take a look at that, because understanding and being able to express your emotion is going to go a long way in helping not only strengthen the relationship, your relationship, but also in managing your overall addiction. So moving right along, we come to practicing mindfulness. Now, the lack of mindfulness, it's the lack of mindfulness that really prevents individuals from staying one step ahead of their addiction and staying active and involved in their relationship. This kind of goes back to the idea of people being stuck in their own head. Your lack of mindfulness results in your partner feeling they're not a priority. And to tell the truth, they're not. They're not your priority. But you can learn to become mindful. All you need to do is just you can start off by just selecting 1 or 2 activities you do every day and get in the habit of paying attention while you're doing it. Brushing my teeth. I'm actually not just brushing my teeth, but I'm feeling the bristles against my teeth and my gum and what that's like. I'm sitting out on the front porch and I'm looking up at the sky and I'm watching the cloud formations and looking at the different shapes that are out there. It's really becoming, again, attuned to what is happening for you. Now, your mind may wander a little bit while you're doing this, but that's okay. Just bring it back to what you're doing. And again, if you think about it, it kind of takes us back to another idea of lacking curiosity. And I think you might be noticing now that many of these traits seem to be related to one another. Getting curious about what happens around you, especially to the people that you care about most, that falls into what mindfulness does. And I promise you, if you do that, they're going to love you for it. So now we move to unresolved childhood pain points. Now, this really isn't a character trait, but it's a very important issue that sits at the heart of an addiction. These individuals, they're haunted by past childhood traumas, but they're just not aware of it. And so there are events happen decades ago that are still being stirred up today by various circumstances that are occurring. So dealing with this really requires the help of a very competent counselor who specializes in trauma. And I know you don't want to do this. Nobody does. But I will tell you this, it is a process that can change your life in many, many ways, including strengthening your relationship. To understand why you think, feel, and behave the way you do can make your life do a 180 in all areas, not just regarding your addiction. So let's look at the idea of being responsive and not compulsive. It's not really much of a need to explain here what this law is about, the ability to stop, assess, rationally think through decisions before making them, really not high on the list of strengths among individuals who deal with addiction. They're reactive. And this type of behavior tends to lead to very unwise and unhealthy decision making. The key to this approach is simple. It's very simple, but it's not easy. And it goes back to, again, that idea of slow everything down. And I'll say that again, slow everything down. See, we just didn't rush anything. We're slowing it down. It feels rather peaceful versus all that anxiety that runs under the surface that gets us talking to 1,000 miles a minute, and we're just way, way, way too busy, and there we're off and running again. Slow everything down. What this does is helps you think twice before making a decision or taking an action, whether that be verbally, physically, or emotionally. This is an area of growth that must be addressed, not just to help manage your addictive behavior, but to assist in building a very satisfying and productive relationship. The next to last trait we're going to look at is here, confronting fears. If you remember before, it said that we're very fearful individuals. And as I mentioned before, if you look at these traits, you can notice that fear is a very common denominator. The most effective way of dealing with your fears is first identifying them, because many people don't even know. I may know I'm afraid of snakes, but the emotional pain, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about emotional pain that we're afraid of, that we don't want to feel. And many people are unaware of what those are. Journaling is a great tool to help you in this area. And once you've identified what those fears are that come from the process, it moves you away from the process of just emotionally thinking that's all driven by fear, and it moves you to the truth of how should I see that fear using rational thinking. So again, as I said, what we're trying to do is move away from the emotions that are driven by fear that causes us to just not embrace something And instead, what I want to do is I want to be rational, and I want to be able to put it to truth. Is this something that I really should be afraid of? And when we do that, what we're going to find out in most cases that that is not the case. Now, again, you can do a lot of this on your own, but it really be a lot more successful if you work with a counselor who specializes in anxiety. Because once you start to reduce the fear or learn to hold on to it and persevere, then we come to find that our rational thinking skills will be much sharper and much more effective in helping us to make decisions and finally outcomes. And then our final area is our ability to control our moods. And sometimes if the mood issue we suffer is anxiety or depression, we may need some sort of medication to assist us. But mood swing can drive your partner crazy because they really never know what to expect. And you have a difficult time controlling them. Again, the key here is taking time to identify what's at the root of the mood swing, but also understanding when your moods start to shift, to be able to slow everything down and say, you know what, I'm feeling out of sorts right now. I wasn't 20 minutes ago. What went wrong? What happened here? Again, we go back to the idea of mindfulness. And therefore, because I can't fix something if I don't know what it is I'm trying to fix. So there you have it very quickly. What are the characteristics that are going to make up that new individual? And as you can see, there's many qualities needed to maintain a healthy relationship. And for those of you who are struggling with the sex or porn addiction, this work is essential to helping to keep your relationship, moving to the other side. So that's all I got for you this week, Tammy.
Well, it's great information, but I'm sitting here thinking, like, early on, this feels overwhelming. So how do you even start?
What we usually start with, if we're looking at first and foremost, people go through and they identify, because most people don't have all of these issues. So what they're going to do is they're going to sit and they're going to identify which ones they have. Most are going anywhere between like 5 and 7. And then what we're going to do, we're going to, as you saw, there's interconnection between all of them. So therefore, while you're working on one, you're also taking care of another one. So what we're going to do though, we're just going to pick up one at a time, and we're going to go through that in depth. But we're going to see after we get done with that, oh wow, you know what, I've already made a difference in some of the other areas. So you're right, it looks very overwhelming. But again, this is not something that gets changed in a period of, 30 days, 90 days. Let's change your entire life. And that's not what this is. This is true, authentic change of a person's character.
So I was thinking, the controlling moods, early on, particularly, I struggled with, the hungry, angry, lonely, tired, the halt, and I've added stress to that too. But, like even, proper nutrition, like there's so many things that I've learned over the course of time. My mood changes if I'm hungry, angry, lonely, tired, and particularly if I'm not taking care of myself on those levels. I was talking at the beginning before the group started that the responsive, not compulsive. I use a serenity prayer, all the time still, because I want to act and not just react. And, because that's my personality, is react. And so, I loved what you shared too about the, being mindful. And, I'm not good at doing mindfulness exercises and that, but I am good at being, slowing things down and being intentional about, looking at things. I think the confronting fears, I was thinking with that too, it's, like in our heads, we go, oh my gosh, terror. And, like if we really start unpacking, what are we really afraid of? And then what is the likelihood that happens? And if it did, what would happen to us? And we realize that we've got these things blown completely out of, out of reality. And some bad things do happen. I'm not saying that they don't, but in our heads, like, they're magnified and way scarier than, than what the reality would be. And if the worst happened, that there is support to help us through it. I mean, like, all of these things.
Yeah.
So talking to
There have
somebody.
been, yeah, there have been major studies that have been done that show that 80% of the things that we worry about or that we're fearful of never happen. Never happen. Doesn't even come close to it. And there's also a large percentage, that 20%, where the outcome is not nearly as devastating as we think it's going to be. You're right. It's all about a mindset. Much of this is about mindset. How do I look at things? And as I talk to my clients about, it's about renewing your mind. I look at Romans 12:2 about that idea that we need to renew our minds in order to be able to think in a rational way versus thinking emotionally. We've done way too much emotional thinking in the past, and it had devastating effects, not just on us, but the people that surround us. Now we need to become more rational in our thinking and approach.
Well, and I think that speaks to the be curious, like, if I take myself out of the emotional and I'm curious, and if I'm talking to you and you're sharing something, I have learned, and this has helped me so much, Eddie, what I hear you saying is, X, Y, Z. And then you can say, well, that's not quite right. But then we're having this conversation, but I'm actively listening to you, and I'm trying to figure out, I'm trying to understand. So then we're having a dialogue, you're feeling heard, and I'm also clarifying, so I'm not assuming that I know whatever it is that you're trying to share. But I picked that up from other therapists. It's like, what I hear you saying is, and that's worked, reflective listening, I guess. So I'm going to stop sharing because we've got some questions.
Okay.
Okay, so why don't the addicts feel the need to read books, listen to blogs, etc., about sex, porn addiction, and how to help their partners through their pain and trauma? It's so hurtful that the last 2.5 years, he has not put forth any effort into trying to understand how to help me heal. I don't feel he believes in the level of trauma that his relational abuse has caused.
Emotional immaturity. I mean, those are the two words, emotional immaturity. That, you know what? Hey, either I don't really have a big problem as you think I have, or your pain, you know what? You're over exaggerating it. It becomes all about them. It is more about them. And in a way, and the other idea too is the shame. I've seen this before where men are so crippled by the shame that they can't go in and do the work. Um, I know that sounds like an excuse for it, but what has to happen in those circumstances is they have to work on the shame to get themselves to a point where it's like, okay, I'm not going to, every time I start to think about what I've done or I start reading books, listening to podcasts, that I'm going to immediately run down this dark hole about how ugly I am, how horrible I am. Instead, I'm doing this because I'm trying to enlighten myself. I'm trying to change who I am. And I also want to be able to help my partner to be able to heal. And one of the best ways they can heal is to see someone doing their work. I had a client in here earlier this morning who was saying his wife was like, I haven't seen you doing your work. And he goes, I do it every day. I do it, he goes, he ran downstairs, got a book. He goes, and I do it, during the lunch hour. And she goes, but I don't see it. And he goes, you know what? I'm going to start doing it at night. I'm going to do it when we're together. Because there gave her a sense of reassurance. All right. He showed her and he is doing it. But for her to see that, again, says, oh, a commitment. Isn't that the key word that we're talking about here? You who have not made a commitment to me, you've broken the commitment to me, have now said, here's a new commitment. So it's one of those two things. It's the idea of being emotionally immature and also the idea of shame that I think that's where most men they struggle in trying to learn more about themselves.
Yeah, and I think that's true too. And what I also feel is really sad because, what I hear is a person who um, did just enough to maybe stop doing the behavior, but hasn't gotten recovery, isn't really working on changing who they are. So, I think of, someone hauling around, 50-pound weights. That's the shame that Eddie's talking about, but it's like, and so fearful of, oh my goodness, if I read that book, I might have to discover something about myself, I might have to change. And so to me, I'm sad for you because he's not willing to do that, but I'm also sad, that he's emotionally and relationally immature and not willing to do that. So the next question is, will the Super Saturday Recovery Summit be recorded? Yes, the April one wasn't, but, or that was recorded, but it didn't work out, but the May ones were, and we will, it's not me, I host, I have the opportunity to host, I'm grateful to do that. But the 3 sessions, so we've got Dr. Stan Tatkin, Jamie Merritt talking about, so Dr. Stan Tatkin did a podcast on sex, love, and addiction, as did Eddie, and as did Jamie Merritt, but he will talk about We Do and why relationships, we're better in relationships when we're, it's us against the world, etc. So timely for our times. And then Jamie Merritt will talk about trauma and recovery. And then Eddie's going to be talking about, the inner child work. So really excited about that. It'll be at 10, noon, and 2 Pacific time on In the Rooms. It's free, but you do have to be a member of In the Rooms in order to do that. We're doing these every month, so stay tuned, but that's that. Okay, so the next question, Eddie, is this webinar one that would help a newer couple where one member is SA, me, the female, and the other is not an addict, nor has ever been any betrayal in the relationship, but where he is trying to understand and support me in recovery? I
Yeah,
think, yeah.
I think absolutely. And the idea of him trying to understand, and that's wonderful. I mean, I'd love to hear that. I mean, especially in light of that first question, which, to Tammy's point, it breaks your heart when, somebody has caused such great harm to someone, and then they won't do what they need to do to help to fix that, to make it better. Like I said, it does. In this case, whoa, we got somebody here who's like, I want to understand you. I want to know what this is about. I want to walk down this path with you. So yes, I think not just this webinar, but all the webinars that are, sex, relationship, and healing. Right, Tammy?
Yes, yeah. And, I think the right information, there's so much garbage out there. So getting information from experts who actually know what they're talking about is really helpful. So my husband, we married, when I was 10 years sober. So he never saw any of that stuff, but he still has to deal with my addict brain. And I share things with him. I go, this is just how my brain thinks. And he gets this look on you. I go, it's difficult being here, but I'm grateful that he wants to understand and he doesn't judge me, but he just goes, okay, she thinks a little differently. So that's awesome. I'm glad you're here. And I did put a link, Eddie, and everyone in the chat for sexandrelationshiphealing.com. Under resources, you can see previously recorded, so you can catch not only Eddie's, but any of the webinars that have been. So if you want to look at volume 1 of today's presentation, you can find it on there. So next question. He does have rage, anger issues and may in fact be a rageaholic, to which he started to address.
Okay, not much of a question, but the idea of the fact of the matter, I'm not surprised. The rage and anger goes back to unaddressed pain. Okay, that's there. He doesn't know how to, and Tammy was talking about this before, when it comes to communication, he doesn't know how to express what he feels, his true emotion. So what you see is you just see the anger. And in that, it's got to be where he learns, okay, one, slow everything down, not to be reactive, be responsible. All right, what do I feel? There he may have another problem. May not know what he feels. Now we bring in, Emotions Anonymous, and we start doing the work there so that he can understand it. My guess is somewhere along the line, he got the message that when you share emotion, something bad happens. Either you're not going to be heard or you're going to be belittled or whatever. And he probably also grew up in an environment where everything was just loud and shouted at people. And there was nobody sitting there teaching him, modeling him. This is what we do with our pain. This is how we present it in a proper way. And this is the way we talk about how we feel about the stuff and not the stuff. Because if I'm going to talk about the stuff, I'm going to be wagging my finger at you. If I'm going to talk about the way I feel about stuff, I'm going to be talking about how I feel very disappointed right now, or I feel saddened right now, or whatever it may be. So, not an uncommon issue, because again, they only have a couple emotions that they can really tap into.
Well, and rage is, first of all, there's adrenaline with it. So
Yeah.
and it's power. And, often underneath that is hurt. And wow, it's way better to feel, in our minds, to feel powerful and, extended out rather than, oh, wow, that really hurt. I also was thinking, what I have experienced is there isn't a place, like Eddie was talking about, there isn't a place to have it be safe, so it's contained or it's raging out, but there wasn't a place to explore what hurt would look like, or to know that you would be okay and someone would be there with you in a safe way, to help with the hurt. But I'm glad he's starting to address it. That's really good.
That is a
So,
good thing,
but
isn't it?
but I bet there's some hurt underneath it too. Okay, so the next question, Discovery Day was 2.5 years ago, 17 years of his acting out.
Wow.
I have a CSAT, he's with an LMFT and chose not to seek out qualified therapist. Oh, I hear this. I have endured 25 years of his controlling, possessive, and jealousy. I found the need to omit info to assuage his abuse, such as leaving out his hair appointments or lunch with a bestie and other inconsequential things, because it was time I wasn't with him. His words. His new boundary for me is to stop omitting from our convos. I'm trying to comply, but it's hard to break a self-preservation habit of 25 years. How do I help him understand why I did this without making it defensive? He refuses to see the magnitude of his mental, emotional, relational abuse.
Okay, well, you just summed it up at the very end there, where he says he refuses to see the pain and anguish that he has caused you. So you trying on your own to do this with a man for who 25 years has not given you that voice to get him to understand of what I'm trying to accomplish here, most likely the level of success you will have will not be very strong. Where I would suggest instead is being able to see if you guys could get into one or the other's counselors and start to talk about this together with that counselor. I would much prefer it be more your counselor who's trained in that area. However, he may feel very threatened by that. And I think just getting in front of somebody, I shouldn't say it this way, may be better than nobody, but that's not always the truth.
That's true.
Sometimes,
I agree with you.
right?
The
I
wrong
knew,
therapist is worse than no
I
therapist.
knew you were going to correct
Yeah,
me. As
yeah,
soon as
yeah.
it came out of my
Yeah,
mouth, I knew
yeah,
you were going to correct me on that, because it's true. You're right. It's
yeah,
true.
yeah.
Right. It's better not to have anybody than to do that. But I think perhaps if you were to say to him, I'd like to talk to your therapist, and maybe just go and have a conversation on your own first about it, or maybe just a quick phone call about what's going on and what you would like to accomplish. And if that's not working, again, I would hope that your therapist continues to help you build more boundaries, because that's what you really need. You need more boundaries. You got a good one. I'm not going to admit, but by doing that and you're bringing this stuff up and he's still, sitting here and being angry and being jealous and being possessive, that means his work is not being accomplished. So therefore, that means, and again, you can't do anything about that, but what you can do is you can take control of this is the behavior I will no longer tolerate. And here, and you got to have this, here are the consequences. If this continues, here's your consequence. And the consequences are important. That's the part of the boundary where many people get in trouble. But that's where I'd be going with that.
Yeah, and I was thinking, 2.5 years, you should have seen major changes. But it's interesting. His boundary for me is to stop omitting from our conversations, but he has not made it safe for you to do that.
Right,
So,
right.
so your boundary to me is, I would love to be able to do that. And when you show me that it's safe to do this, then I, will. But I 100% agree with Eddie.
Can I say this?
Please.
Okay, and I wouldn't go back and tell him this. And if he's listening, hey, you know what? Then just grow up. If I say it, you're not in a position to have boundaries. Okay, you're not in a position to have boundaries. You're the one who's caused the issues. You're the one who caused these problems. And the fact that you won't even look at yourself and see, do that self-reflection, and although she's crying out for your help, and you're sitting there turning a blind eye to it, and you keep throwing it back at her feet, you know what? Shame on you. I'm sorry, but shame on you for that. So therefore, he hasn't earned the right to have boundaries. Now, I guarantee you there's probably 20 therapists who will listen to this and they'll say, oh my gosh, what is this guy saying? But I'm sorry, that's just the way I feel. This is one of those punch him in the face moments that I have.
Well, this actually leads into the next question, and I know how you're going to feel about this. How do I help my addict understand how it makes me feel that he is not willing to give up shows, movies with nudity? He replies, am I supposed to watch Disney Channel? So he's choosing his choice over my safety. I went, when I read this. So
Right.
please share.
Yeah, well, once again, that last line, he's choosing what he wants, what he needs, he desires, he is choosing that over you and the emotional comfort that you need. And once again, what are we dealing with? We're dealing with emotional immaturity. We're probably dealing with somebody who growing up maybe didn't get what they wanted many times. And now as an adult, it's like, I want what I want when I want it, and the hell with everybody else. Okay. Or somebody who was very spoiled and just received everything they wanted. And therefore now, you know what? Your needs don't matter. My needs do. This is something that the only way you get movement on this is to put him in front of a therapist who again trained, who's going to be able to help him explore, why are you so inwardly focused? This goes back to one of the things I have there. He's so inwardly focused. It's just about what he needs versus what you need.
What he wants, not even needs. What he
Right,
wants.
what he wants. Yes, thank you. I'm sorry. What he wants. And therefore, somebody has to be able to sit there, not to say, oh, you're being selfish. That's not what we want to do. What we want to do is say, why is this happening? What makes you this way that you can't see outward at the pain and distress that your spouse partner is going through? And by him learning that, getting that insight, perhaps that's where he can start to make change. As I said before, if I don't know what's broken, I can't fix it. And he has to figure out what's broken. So that's where I'd be. I think you got to get into therapy to be talking about this.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I don't know what his 3-circle plan has. And, if for many people, nudity is too close to porn, so therefore it's on the inner circle behavior. So talking to his sponsor, talking to his therapist, that would be important. So okay, next question. What does it mean if the addict 2 years in still refuses? Oh my goodness, we had a lot of refusing.
Got a lot of them today, don't we?
To verbalize his acting out behavior. It feels minimizing when all I hear the things I did hurt you, or what I did, or my behaviors. I have asked him to read oh, please don't do this. I've asked him to read the text emails he sent to other women. No.
Shaming.
Because
Shaming.
I know, but like, you don't need to have that stuff in your head.
No,
So,
no, we're
because he
shaming.
says he never remembers the hurtful things he said. He shrinks when I verbalize them. When you called the hookers, when you told her you were thinking of her when we had sex, or et cetera. Help, please. It is suggested that we delay our formal disclosure because of this. 2 years in and no formal disclosure. I
Yeah,
don't know
that,
who you're working with. This does not feel, good. Eddie,
no, it doesn't. It doesn't. It's not right. You should have had a disclosure long before
long
this.
time ago.
However, and that's why I could understand why you're doing some of the things that you are doing, because you're very frustrated and just feeling the sense that I want to understand, what has gone on here? Why have you done this? Plus, more importantly, you want him to take responsibility for his behavior and action. But I will say this, having him sit there to read those texts and those emails, again, while you're doing it to try to help him to remember, we're doing more shaming. As you said, he just seems to shrink whenever I verbalize. We need to get him to feel. Remember, I mentioned this during my talk. One of the things is the shame will get people to shut down. We need to get him to move beyond that shame. And that's part of what you can do here by saying, look, I'm not trying to shame you or whatever. I just need to understand what's ground zero. Where does the bottom lie in all of this? Because right now I just feel like I'm falling, falling, falling. So please, can you please help me here? And being able to work with a therapist, and I don't know if you're working with one or not, but 2 years is just unrealistic. You need a formal disclosure to start the whole process.
But let's clarify, a formal disclosure is not reading the text to you. The formal
No,
disclosure is data. It's in a contained way, because once you get that stuff in your head, you don't get it out of your head. And
no.
so trying to protect you, now as I'm reading this, I'm going, I think you've already read all that stuff. And, and then it feels like you're just trying to shame him
What
into
do you,
having it
Tammy?
yeah.
Tammy, what do you think about the idea of her taking those things and just deleting them and getting rid of them?
I have a feeling they're stuck in her brain. So I don't,
I know, but still, at least they're gone from being able to go
possibly,
back and redo it again.
yeah.
Something you may want to think about.
Yes, but I don't know who you're working with. If you aren't working with therapists, get good help, qualified help, and get he should have his history. He should have like, there should be a plan. He should have his 3-circle plan. Like, you're 2 years in, there should be a lot of movement by now,
Yeah.
and it doesn't sound like
Yeah.
it. So, okay, next question. My husband is being emotionally absent from me. I feel like he does not take my back against family or friends too. Do you think I should divorce?
Well, I'm not going to sit here and tell you whether you should divorce or not. I don't know enough of all the details. Um, Again, the emotional immaturity, and you have to go back to why are these men hardwired the way they are. One, like you said, he doesn't stand up for you. He doesn't support you. So therefore, I get a sense of somebody who would, beaten over the head when he was younger about, what, we're the ones who are in charge, not you. And he feels very unsafe of trying to step up, and he probably wants to not deal with conflict. The fact that he's emotionally absent is because nobody taught him how to, again, identify what he feels, express it, be vulnerable, and to be able to take on your emotions. That is all part. I would be getting him into the Emotion Anonymous program. Like I said, if it's not one that's live, they have the chat, they have the live meetings. I do the live online meetings. But just to begin that process, there's a wonderful book called The Emotionally Unavailable Man. I don't know, Tammy, what do we have in our thing about emotion? Is there any book that
Well,
stands out to you?
there are some books that are recommended on sex and relationship healing.com, and I don't remember what all of those are.
Okay.
But
Okay.
but here's the other thing that I'm thinking about with our treatment program, Seeking Integrity Los Angeles, specifically works with men with sex addiction, intimacy disorders, and all
Mm-hmm.
the stuff that we're reading here
Right.
is intimacy disorders, or co-occurring sex addiction and chemical dependency. When what you're doing now isn't working, you need to up the level. And that may be additional therapist sessions, it may be more locally, or it may be time for a 14-day program. We see such transformation, for these guys, and more importantly,
Right.
spouses and partners. I've had calls from spouses and partners that have said this was life changing. That's when I know how successful it is, because they took what they learned and they took it back to their real life, and their partners see a difference. So that's one of the things.
These kind of questions that we have here today fall perfectly in line with why I'm making this push, that we have to go beyond just treating the addiction itself. We can't just say, okay, the behavior's gone.
Right.
There has to be more of a transformation in many other areas, because you know what's going to happen? That addiction is going to manifest itself some other way.
Exactly. We always talk about the acting out behavior is a symptom, and it's a painful symptom. And I know that I never minimize that, but what we're looking to do is address the underlying issues. It's the neglect, the abuse, abandonment, trauma, whatever
Absolutely.
it is, that causes it. Because otherwise it's the person, we have people that have been chemically sober for multiple years, and they're a hot mess in sex addiction. Right. Or they stop that, and then they gain 50 pounds because they've started stuffing it with food. I mean, exactly. That's not healing. Healing is getting to those underlying issues. So one final question. So we started a little bit late, so hang with us, and thank you for hanging with us. Follow up on jealous omission. He has made some improvement in the controlling possessiveness, but, all in caps, the problem is he doesn't see how deep the abuse was in the past.
Yeah, again, and I'm guessing that, again, that's probably more of a shame issue. He just doesn't want to go there. I'm not sure how much you communicated to him, or a therapist has communicated to him, the importance of him being that to empathize and to feel your pain, and to recognize and take responsibility for what he has done. But that, and again, maybe it'll happen down the line. Like you said, you're seeing changes that are being made. You know what? We don't turn the ocean liner around in a short period of time. It takes a long time to turn around an ocean liner. So therefore, you know what? I would be optimistic about the fact that he made some improvement. Keep praying for the fact that, he'll continue to do that as time goes on.
So the next one, and this will be the final one, my husband views this as playing the victim. If she talks about this, I don't feel safe enough due to lack of seeing recovery behaviors in him to open myself up to him. So, and they're both in therapy and online support groups, but he goes to, you're playing the victim. And again, I go, thoughts?
Okay, so once again, you're both in therapy, and I assume you're dealing with different therapists. I think you need to come together with one of those therapists so that you can bring up this issue.
Or both of your therapists.
Or both of them, right?
Yeah, honestly, because then his therapist will understand where you are coming from. I love that idea. So
I think absolutely, because I bring partners in all the time because I want a gut check. I want to know what's going on. The issues you folks have been talking about right here, I want to know, are they playing out? Because many times my guys are telling me, oh, it's good. And like, can't be that good.
Or she's playing the victim, and she,
correct. So you're hearing that.
Lateral and then it's like information. It's very good.
Right. And then you bring them in, you hear the other side, and it's like, oh, wait, you didn't tell me that part. So, but yeah, I'd look to get all four of you together and say, and don't go in pointing fingers, but just saying, this really hurts when he brings this up. I'm trying to heal. I'm grieving, and he sees it as me playing the victim. Let them educate him, because that's what he needs. In almost every one of these scenarios we looked at today, it's about more insight that the addict needs to be able to, say, ooh, I got to do it a different way.
So Kristen Snowden on her webinar last week, and she uses this, the story I'm telling myself when, when you tell me that I'm playing the victim is that you don't care, that you're minimizing. I mean, and that kind of takes it away from just the pointing the fingers. It's like the story I'm telling myself is, so consider that maybe that link that I shared has her webinar from last week on it too. So thank you all for staying with us. Eddie will be on Super Saturday Recovery Summit on Saturday, but he will also be back next month, third week of the month on Wednesday. So thank you,
Looking
Eddie.
forward to it.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody. Bye.